Hello. I want to talk about breaking negative patterns in children. And I've been experiencing this lately as someone who works with children. My name is Leisa. In case you are new to my channel, I am an early childhood educator running a family daycare. I'm also a mother of 4 children who I have been unschooling for almost 14 years now. And about that long ago, I went through a spiritual awakening and I decided to go on a completely different parenting journey to what I had ever known before. I completely let go and I observed and I studied my children. I made this my life goal and passion to be with them all day, every day, and watch how they learn and grow naturally in the presence of compassion and acceptance and guidance. And I completely let go of all rules and punishment and control. And I love to talk about how that has created such healthy, happy, balanced, kind people in the world. So I want to talk specifically about breaking negative patterns, because before I went on this new parenting journey, I was experiencing all of those familiar behaviors and attitudes and negative patterns that children tend to have. We might know this as acting out for attention or throwing tantrums and things like this. And not only being a parent who decided to let go and do something differently, I've also learned a whole lot more as an educator working with other people's children. So I will start by sharing how I broke negative patterns and behaviors with my own children first. So once I started to awaken to the truth in myself that my children's behavior was a reflection of my behavior, and once I changed the way that I was treating them, and once I changed my beliefs about children and parenting, and I started to allow them to be more themselves and express themselves more and basically follow their passions, I saw a complete shift in behavior in them. Now, this didn't happen overnight, because up until then, my children were used to being told what to do. They were used to getting into trouble for having feelings. They were not allowed to fight. They were not allowed to talk back. They had to do as they were told. I got extremely triggered if they didn't listen. And so when I decided that I didn't want to be who I was anymore, that really wasn't me deep down, I realized that I wanted to just stop doing everything that I had previously done and just be quiet. And so when my children started fighting and yelling and chucking a tantrum and getting upset, I began to just listen. And I stopped reacting, because the biggest cause, and this is what I began to see, the biggest cause of them continuing to behave negatively was my reaction. They were getting a reaction. And a lot of times I would react badly and then apologize. So they were learning that if they acted a certain way, they would get this negative attention and love afterwards. So now I'm no psychologist, I'm no child therapist. I don't know everything about children. I'm still on this learning journey. So I can't say exactly why children always behave the way they do. But for me, I began to see there was this pattern that would play out, and it would always go a certain way. It would always begin a certain way and end a certain way. So what I started doing was I first stopped reacting to this. So if there was something that they couldn't have, or if they were upset, or they just, it's not like they didn't really get what they wanted if it was within reason. But let's say they were having a fight, or they wanted something that one of the other children had or something. When I would react, this would just cause them to fight a lot more. Once I stopped reacting, at first, all of their feelings came out, all of their frustration and anger, and I had to let it play out. So the quickest way to end a negative pattern is to first let it play out completely and fully, and to not give in by giving it any energy or attention. Now, I'm not saying ignore your child when they are crying and upset, because I would not do that, and I did not do that. But if they aren't, there's phases to this pattern. So an example is it will start off with anger and frustration. Now, I do believe, and I do know enough to believe, that anger is a cover emotion for sadness. So oftentimes when there's a lot of anger and frustration, once that's allowed to be felt and a child moves through that, a lot of times they'll start to cry, because that's the deeper emotion is sadness or grief or something. So I do know that a lot of frustration had built up in my children from years of control and not being stopped with their feelings, being told not to feel, getting into trouble for being angry. So when I first completely stopped giving any energy or reaction to their feelings, and I would just be silent and calm, and and even sometimes if I would feel a reaction building up, I would just sit with that in myself. But I stopped reacting. I stopped taking it personally. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about them. And if I thought that it was about me, then that's on me, not them. And so at first, there would be tantrums, and there was anger, and sometimes even yelling at me. And I would stay strong, and I would just allow it to play out. And this sometimes looked like something being thrown out a window even, or someone going into their room and trashing it. But I can tell you, this happened only once or twice, and it never happened again, because I broke the negative pattern, the negative cycle of reacting, and then them having to suppress their feelings, and then those feelings just coming out again later, even worse. So I started to do this, and I noticed that all of my children's outbursts and fighting completely stopped. There was just this settledness in the home. And I made mistakes along the way. I wasn't perfect. And sometimes I still react to my children's feelings, but I was able to break the negative patterns and cycles of them having a feeling and me reacting, and then that provoking them to continue that cycle. So years later, I went on to work with children in childcare, and now I have been able to do this with children in my care as well. An example is if let's say one of the children are sitting in a chair and another child was sitting in that chair before and they are demanding they have that chair back, but they are being unruly about it and they are screaming and yelling. If I have tried to explain that, no, you cannot have that chair, somebody's sitting there, but we can go over here. Sometimes that child will not want to hear that because they want the pattern to play out. They want the reaction, so they will just get stuck in that cycle and they will need and want to play that out. Now, what generally happens, and I've done this before as a parent and an educator, is I will react and it will just provoke it and it will just become much harder for that child to settle. It will go on much longer and they will continue to do it more and more. Now, I'm going to say that initially, the first time that you go to break that pattern, it could take hours because this child has possibly years of this pattern playing out, and they will try and they will continue to try to get that reaction. Stay strong, stay centered, stay grounded. You will know when a shift has occurred because their mood will change, their behavior will change. They will either let go and have a cry or they will feel happy and relieved. So I've seen both play out. So if I have given an instruction to a child and I believe that my firm answer is no, then I will stick with that. And now if this child throws a tantrum or yells or gets upset, and now this is going to get worse and worse, and it's going to build and build and build. They're going to try harder and harder and harder to get that reaction. It could mean as long as no one's getting hurt and nothing's important is getting broken, it's okay to be silent. This is not withholding emotion, because if that child comes to you and they fall in your lap and they fall in your arms, they are ready to receive that love. Many times, though, they are not there yet. They are wanting this pattern to play out. They are wanting subconsciously to get into trouble because that is what they're used to. So what I've been able to do is I've been able to ignore this negative behavior. Now, that doesn't mean I don't ever speak to the child. If in the middle of it they ask for something to eat, of course. But it's done with positivity and love. There's no anger. Let's say this child has just thrown a massive tantrum and then they say, I want my lunchbox. Okay, here you go. You can even give them a hug. Once that negative behavior starts up again, there's no energy or attention given to that. If it's the negative pattern, if it's the negative behavior wanting a reaction, don't give in, stay strong. The moment that shift occurs, the moment the child makes a positive choice or a positive shift, we move in and praise. Now we don't go, good boy, you stopped being angry. Good boy, you stopped throwing a tantrum. But you give love, you give attention, you give energy. The moment that negative behavior shifts to something positive, and this will break the cycle, this will break the pattern, because they will start to learn that they are not going to get a reaction. Now, this is not the same as not giving them what they want. You need to first ask, is this child genuinely right? You will be able to tell if you are committed to becoming self-aware and committed to becoming more observant and aware of your children or other children around you. You will begin to tell the difference between a true need and a negative pattern that is wanting to play out and get a negative reaction. You don't want to give the negative reaction. You want to stay calm, but you don't want to withhold love when it is asked for and needed. So I hope this video has been helpful. Please comment if you would like me to share more about this or anything else related to negative behaviors, as I have quite a lot of content to share. So take care, everybody. Bye.